Good morning. PatBenage here, the evolution coach, creator of the Inner Path and the 6-Week Shift, and author of this weekly inspirational blog, SoulTalk. Today I want to continue a little bit the topic that I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks. If you haven't caught up on that for a few weeks, then just go back. It started a couple of weeks ago, and talking about really the journey of soul, talking about who are we, I mean, really, what is the truth of who you are, who I am, who we are, where did we come from, where are we going? What is this journey about? You know, obviously it takes a lot more than a few weeks to give any real substance to that. But what I'm trying to do is just paint a little bit bigger picture, and it's come out of just what I'm seeing in the world and what's been happening and kind of what all of the stuff in the world, how it draws our focus into a limited view, and I'm trying to paint a little larger picture, bigger view, and hopefully get you to expand your own vision a little bit. You know, it's not that you need to see things the way I do, or that my way is the right way. It's my way, you know, it's how I see it, and it's definitely a larger picture than what is painted in the media, what is, you know, what a lot of people express, whether they believe that or not. Anyway, in the last couple of videos, last couple of weeks blogs that we've done, that I've done, I've talked about, you know, a little bit about who we are, soul, and where we're from, source, and how we came into this physical being. And I talked about the fact that we take on this soul body covering, a mental body, a causal body, an emotional body, and then a physical body. And all of this is designed, it's specifically designed to give us the experience of separation, to give us the experience of being an individual, as opposed to the oneness that is our truth. And you can believe that or not, it doesn't matter. It is what I see. It is my experience that we are one, that everything is connected, that everything's part of the whole. It just appears differently. It just appears because the whole, in order to experience itself, has to be able to experience all aspects of itself. And as an individual soul, that's what each individual soul then is creating through its journey, is the experience of being all of it through the experience of each individual aspect. It's pretty amazing when you look at it that way, when you take that perspective of this is an unfolding of everything that I am. Everything that I am. That's the unfolding of life in our experience of it. That we are here experiencing the unfolding of life through our individual perspective. And through our individual perspective and all other individual perspectives, the one source experiences its life unfolding. That God lives through us. God experiences life through us because we're part of it. We're an element of Source. Like I said, that divine spark, it is Source, and yet it's also an aspect of Source. It creates these coverings, these layers, these filters for experiencing separation, experiencing relativity, relationships, and it couldn't do it in any other way. That's the only way that we can experience differences between the aspects, is by being able to see the difference, being able to feel the difference, being able to notice that there's this and that. Through time, we can notice the past, the present, and we can imagine the future. But we can only do that from this place of separation where we can experience it. In the oneness, we are all of that. I am all of that. You are all of that in the oneness. But in the oneness, I don't experience it. I don't experience what that feels like, what that looks like. It's just a knowingness. But in the process of this journey that soul has devolved into the physical being, and it experiences itself as becoming more and more and more separate as it goes through this physical evolution to the point of being human. And in the human experience, now the human experience brings about self-awareness, brings about ego, it brings about really identifying with this physical, this emotional, this mental identity. And I talked about last time that soul is really, for most of this, asleep. Soul has spent so many physical lifetimes through this journey that it's really asleep until it reaches a point where it's experienced so much that there's this yearning inside to be one again. And as that begins to emerge, then soul begins to wake up. And it notices that, particularly in between lives, it notices that something's amiss. that its experience is not all that it's meant to be. That its experience is not the fullness and the oneness of its truth. And soul's all about truth. Soul knows that it is this divine spark. But in the process of becoming this physical being, this physical being takes over in the physical life. The mind, the emotions, all of that takes over. The ego takes over. And it says to soul, I am this. And it actually assumes, your mind actually assumes it is soul. It is the I am. It's not, but it assumes that it is, and it believes that it is, and it wants to be that. And yet it knows that its ideas are limited. So it too, the mind is always seeking its own completeness, which would be in the universal mind, the cosmic consciousness. So the mind is seeking this cosmic consciousness, and it does that through the gathering of information. So it's gathering experiences, and it files those away, and it keeps doing it, and it keeps, its whole purpose is to gather information from outside of itself. Everything that it sees, everything that it feels, everything that it hears, the mind is gathering that because it's assuming that by gathering more and more information, it will become whole. That cosmic consciousness is the knowing of everything. And it sees it as being out there. It's always looking out there, out here somewhere. But no matter how much information the mind gathers, no matter how smart it gets, no matter how much it thinks it knows, it never reaches the end of it, and it never finds truth. Because all that's out here, as I've said before, is a reflection of what is underneath, what is within. As above, so below. And not in the heavens up here somewhere, but in a level of consciousness. The lower levels are always a reflection of what is directly above it. And the lower your level in consciousness, the more distorted it is, because there's so many reflections, because there's so many levels. And so rather than, and as we move outward in this physical world, we're moving away from the source of it. And it's only in moving toward the source that we begin to see truth more clearly. We begin to move through the reflections. We begin to move up in levels, and so it's less reflected. It's less distorted. And so clarity only comes from going within, never out here. The more we search out here, the more distorted life becomes, the less clear things are. I mean, if you've had the experience of searching and searching outside for answers, I think probably, if you're a little bit like me, that what you've found over the course of time and effort is that the more you know, the more you know you don't know. The more you know, the more you see, the more information you gather, the more it just confuses things, and you go, there's so much information, and there's so many variables, and it just confuses stuff. We're able as humans to understand the simplicities of life. Sometimes some of the simple life you can understand reasonably well, And the simple aspects of ourselves, the physical part of ourselves, we can understand reasonably well. But when it comes to the psyche, to the psychology, we've got no clue. In a lot of cases, we try, we think we do, and even our understanding of the physical is limited. And as we delve into it more and more, we see that it becomes more complex. Simplicity only really exists within. Simplicity only exists in truth. And yet we've been looking for truth outside of ourselves forever. As life progresses for soul, as the physical experience unfolds, soul begins to, as I said, wake up. It begins to notice that what it's seeing through the mind's eye, what it sees through ego, isn't the whole truth. That something's missing. And it knows that, but it has to then begin to convince the mind and ego that that's the case. Because mind and ego are always convinced that the answers lie out here somewhere. And there's always a new thought. And, we've got new thought. So a new thought, a new idea, a new perspective that somebody has, that somebody offers, that says, oh, well, maybe this is it. And so we follow that and we pursue that to whatever end until we reach a point where we've extracted everything that we can get from that. And we find that it's, whether that's a religion, whether that's education, philosophy, whatever, metaphysics, whatever aspect, we will pursue it until we've extracted all of the information, all of the experience that we need, and we then reach a point where we go, this is all I can get from this. My experience, I'll give you an example, my experience with the Catholic Church. Grew up in a Catholic family, went to school at a Catholic school, went to church every Sunday, and, went through the sacraments, all that good stuff. Even at the age of 8 or 9, I actually thought I wanted to be a priest. But even at an early age, I remember in perhaps first or second grade, maybe third, somewhere in that early time frame, and being taught in the Catholic tradition that the Catholic religion was the religion. That if you weren't baptized in the Catholic Church, you couldn't get into heaven. And I got to thinking, because I was at least, I'd learned enough that I knew that there were a lot of other religions, and most people in the world weren't Catholic. So what about them? What about those people who never, ever heard of Jesus? Never, ever heard of the Catholic Church? What about them? Why would a God who loved us condemn them to, at that time they still, the Catholic Church said, well, that's where souls go, they go to limbo. Why would you be in limbo for eternity? It just didn't make sense. It didn't make sense. And even at that age, even at early grade school age, and I think those ideas just stayed planted in me, and over time, by the time I was a young adult, the Catholic Church just didn't hold anything for me anymore. I really extracted everything that I needed in this lifetime from it. I'd gotten an understanding of God, of some higher power, and that was what I needed to move forward on my journey for this life. And I've done the same thing with education. I've done the same thing with some metaphysics and philosophy. I've studied it, but at some point in that process, I've reached a level where that I found all that it had to offer for me, and yet I knew there was still more. I'm so happy that you joined me, and we're going to continue this conversation again next week. I love this. I love this. I love you guys. I look forward to this every week. And I'm so happy that you guys have continued to support me and be here, and just thank you. Remember, go out and live your life from the inside out.